Hi, everyone. This is Becky Droz. Thank you for listening to the Gorilla HR podcast. Today, we are going to talk about a topic that impacts so many different workers, and that is caregiving. So, one of the things that I hear when I'm talking with different employers or when I'm talking with different employees, or even just looking at survey data about what's going on in the workforce, is that we have so many people that are trying to work and also care for others, whether that's children or whether that's their aging parents. And so, I often hear, well, we don't know what to do with that. We don't really have any options. There's nothing. We're just kind of stuck. And I am excited to tell you there are options. There are some things that you can do. One of the things that I think is kind of interesting is this data point from the US Census Bureau. It says that by 2030, the population of adults age 65 and older is actually going to be greater than the population of children. So when I first saw that statistic, I thought, well, 2030 is like eons away. So I'm not going to worry about that. That's 5 years away. So within 5 years, our population is going to have a lot more folks that are older than we have of kids. So that's a group of people that are going to need some care. They're going to need some support. And not just those individuals, but we need to think about the actual caregivers. And for a lot of folks, that's their kids. So their adult children are thinking about what do they do with mom and dad? How do they manage their lives? This has a big impact on people, and a lot of people really struggle with that. So, 67% of people in a survey conducted by the S&P Global and AARP said that they struggle with balancing work and life because they have these caregiving responsibilities. So, it's definitely a real issue with that many people that are having a hard time figuring out, well, how do I be successful at work, but how do I also take care of my family and my aging parents? Workers also said that they thought employers were a lot more understanding when it came to taking care of kids versus taking care of adults. So 80% of the people that answered the survey said, yeah, my work is okay. They're a lot more flexible, a lot more understanding when it comes to the things for my little ones versus my adult caregiving duties. So we have a problem there, right? We have workers who are trying to figure out how to be successful in all of these different things. We have an aging population and we don't know how to support them and what to do with them. And it's creating a big strain on our workforce. However, we do have some resources, and I am super excited today to have Kelly Ogden. Kelly Ogden's company is Kelly Ogden Lifestyle Management. And Kelly has a lot of services that she offers that will actually help people in this generation. So, Kelly, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Becky. And you did some great research there. You're exactly right. There is a group of people who are the sandwich generation, right? Not only, and that sandwich generation looks a little different. It could be people like me who've got young kids and then adult parents, as well as grandparents are considered in some
Yeah.
cases,
Yeah.
even that sandwich generation. If you had kids young and those kids had kids young, you could be like 60 years old and caring for a parent as well as your children and grandchildren to some extent,
Yeah.
and even holding a full-time job. So it is a real strain for people. As we know, retirement is expensive. There's a lot of things increasing costs. And because of that, there's a lot of people who would otherwise be taking care of their parents, but they're having to work for longer periods of time. So the strain is real. And I
Yeah.
liked one of your statistics that you said about in 2030. I've looked at similar stats. And one thing that was really shocking to me, and this is what was the slap in the face, that there's going to be a real problem here in the next 10 years. That is, in 10 years, there will be more adults in diapers than babies. And that
Wow.
is a very real statistic. I know it's a
Yes.
little odd,
No,
but
but like,
it
what
kind of,
better way to phrase it? I mean,
but it
that's the
was,
truth.
that's the truth. And there is in the industry, there's this thing now called solo seniors, and that is those people who do not have children to support them.
Yeah.
So that we are seeing an increasing amount of clients that fit that demographic.
Yeah.
And so there's a real need for support for those folks too.
Yeah, for sure. So many things already I'm thinking about, even in my own experiences. So, one thing I've thought about, so my dad passed away a couple years ago, but my mom is still around. So now she is living on her own and she is definitely falls into this, senior category. And
Mhm.
there are some things that she can do. And she gets incredibly frustrated when she has to call and ask for help for something. I know it just like really irks her that she can't do everything on her own.
Yeah.
And there
Well,
are some things where I'm like, I don't want you to do some of these things. Like, you are going to hurt yourself.
yes, I'm glad. Well, I'm glad you said that too, because one of the things that we've found, when I started the business, I wasn't thinking that there would be clients who had family in town. I thought we were really going to be focused on those people whose family had moved away and they needed support locally. But that has not been the case. What
Yeah.
I was finding, and it doesn't go for all of our clients, but a good majority of them do have their family members in town, but they do not want to feel like a burden to their family. So they are willing to pay for extra support. And in our case, we give as needed support, right? It's not every day that it falls into a different field, which we can talk about too, but that would be home care. But I'm focused on that niche between retirement
Yeah.
age and that home care sort of advanced skilled nursing care. So
Yeah.
there is a real need there, and I know that people do need the support, but they feel guilty asking for family to do so much when they are taking care of a bunch of other things.
Yeah. Even my mom will sometimes be like, if my brother who's out of town is coming to town, she'll have like a list for him. And I'm like, why? We could have come over and done that.
Yeah.
You
Yes.
didn't have to wait. We could have come and helped with that. But she's like, no, no, I've got a list for him.
Yep. Well, and I'll tell you, more gets done for us because they are paying for our service, right? And so they say, hey, I come in and some of my clients have a to do list, right? These are the 5 things that I want done. It may not be as easy to ask that of their children, but
Yep.
because they're paying for a service, they don't
Yeah.
feel bad asking for those things to get done. And it
Yep.
really just gives them the peace of mind, right? That I know I can ask for it and I know it'll get done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When did you start your business?
So I started really at the end of 2020, which was
Okay.
not a great time to get into the senior industry just because
Yeah.
people didn't, were still very scared to have people come into
Yes.
their homes.
Yeah.
So it was like at the end of 2020 when I was kind of developing the business model. And then 2021, I was fortunate enough that my corporate job allowed me to scale back my time with them as I grew the business. And
Love
really
that.
by 2021, seniors were desperate for people to come back in their homes
Yeah.
just because there was a lot of
Yeah.
social isolation.
Yeah.
And so that's where we really kind of saw things take off. My background is accounting. I've always been great with numbers, but my people are my passion. And so for
Yeah.
me, it was, I saw a need. I said, hey, what are my talents and how can I use those to best serve others? And it was either working moms or it was the senior demographic. And for me, relationship is super super important. And so I thought, if I'm going into a home that's mom's upstairs, on the computer doing work all day, I was getting no real fulfillment out of that because I was
Mhm.
going in, doing laundry day in and day out, and that just wasn't fulfilling to me. For
Sure.
me, I feel like we have a lot to learn from our elders, and I really crave relationship. And so, and again, these are folks that really want. They have some social isolation. And so
Yeah.
having somebody come in to see them is a bright spot in their day. And so that was very fulfilling for me. So that's the direction that I took.
I know. It makes me think of years ago before my grandmother passed, and she lived with my parents for a few years, and they had a dog, and my parents had hired somebody who would come and take the dog for a walk each day. And I really think a big piece of that was the socialization for my grandma too.
Absolutely.
Like I think
Absolutely.
she really enjoyed that, because my grandma would be like, "Oh, the dog walker came by," and she knew her whole life story and all these different things happening. So yeah,
Yeah. Well, I mean, what I'm seeing too is because I thought I would be largely serving clients who were in single family homes. And we do have
Mhm.
a subset of those people who are still independent, very, very independent. But a large part of our client base is actually in a retirement community. So I guess what that means is even though they've downgraded some of their daily chores, right, because they're
Mhm.
not having to mow the lawn anymore, they don't maybe not even have to cook, there's still a lot of things that need to be taken care of. And when you get to a certain age, your time is spent going to doctor's appointments, going downstairs and playing, bingo or whatever social activities the activities directors have planned in these retirement communities.
Yeah.
And it just, as you age, you get more and more things to deal with. Like the paperwork doesn't go down, it actually goes up.
Yeah.
And so even though they've downgraded some of the simple chores, there's still a lot to get done. And what we find is that there's only enough energy or mental capacity to take care of some of those needs. And
Sure.
that's, having breakfast, lunch, and dinner, getting some social activity, maybe some exercise if it's possible, and going to doctor's appointments. And so it's all the other stuff that really starts to pile up for our clients particularly, and that's where we fill the gap.
Yeah, which I think is great too, because I think for all of us, time is an incredibly limited resource, and of course, if you're further along in your life, it's even more valuable because you don't have as much. So I know if you have the ability to have a service come and help with some of those chores and routine tasks, so that you can go and play mahjong or dominoes or whatever it is, like yeah, I'd
Yeah.
rather do that for sure.
Yes. Yeah, and that's I mean, this is it's retirement, right? This should be the time
Yeah,
of life that you enjoy. This should be the good life. But what we see is just people are so drained and overwhelmed, and there's a real procrastination paralysis, right? Like
mhm,
there's so much to do and they can't seem to make progress on it, and so they essentially give up before and then it becomes so overwhelming that they don't even
yeah,
know where to start. What we do is we help our clients, and we are not somebody that comes in and sees you 3 4 times a week. That would be home care if you needed help with
right,
activities of daily living, the bathing, dressing,
right.
and feeding. This is help when you need it, right? We are
Yes,
your personal assistant and we come in. Our visits are typically between 2 and 4 hours, and it's
mhm.
very flexible. And we help get you at a maintenance level so that you
Yeah.
can enjoy those things without any worry, and some peace of mind that things that you need to do are getting done.
What are some of the most common requests that you get? What are some of the services that you find more and more people are needing your assistance with?
One of the biggest services that we offer is administrative help. And so
Mhm.
that is going through the mail, taking action on what needs taking action on, filing things, putting them into the filing system, shredding what needs to be shredded. A lot of these tasks that require online work
Yes.
gets to be a little tricky for people who are not as
Sure.
adept with the technology.
God, it's tricky
So
for me now, so
yeah, I know it is getting more difficult, but it's those things we're trying to simplify our clients'
yeah.
lives. And so doing more things digitally is doing that, but that's not easy for people to do. Even at tax time, collecting all the
Oh,
tax
yes.
documents that were needed for the CPAs, like that's a big deal and it takes time and it's exhausting. So how can we come in and help simplify that process? And man, what a weight we're lifting off of
Oh,
their
for
shoulders,
sure.
knowing
For
somebody
sure.
else is assisting with that. The other thing is like bookkeeping, right? So, what is a huge indicator that somebody is not keeping up with their affairs? If you start to see piles of paper
Yeah.
everywhere in the house, and the mail is not being opened, that means there is no energy to attend to those things. But as
Yeah.
we know, there's late fees, right?
Yeah.
We have negotiated late fees off of bills because people are not keeping up with those things.
Sure.
So administrative is a big one. Also transportation. So that
Okay.
is for our clients who are no longer driving. Doctor's appointments are super important, and
Yep.
it can be a case where our health is at risk because people are not getting to their appointments or they're not put on the calendar. So kind of that scheduling and actually the process of getting to the doctor appointment is certainly a big deal. And then the last thing that we really help our clients with from the personal assistance side of the business is the organization. So,
Mhm.
just physical organization. If you have a hard time bending down or you can't lift things as well as you used to, especially when you talk about moving and downsizing into a small retirement community, your spaces often are utilized for more than one purpose, right? So a closet is not just a housing unit for clothes. It's also your storage unit and where you put your decor. And so that space has to be organized in a way
Yes.
that is functional and accessible for
Yeah.
clients. Okay.
So one story I'll share briefly. So my grandmother, before she passed away, was living in an independent living apartment, and my gosh, she had so much stuff, and like she had, slowly downsized over the years, but she had a lot of stuff. And she called me one day, and the racks like fell off the walls because she had just piled them with so much stuff. And so she called
Yeah.
like so upset, and she was like, I had to climb my way out of all the things because I mean they basically
Mhm.
fell on her. And fortunately, she didn't get hurt at all, but she called and my husband and I went over and it was just like, I looked at it and was overwhelmed by just the stuff. And so it's
Yeah.
like, okay, we can reinforce the shelves and do all these different things. But I think even just how I felt with all of these things that were disorganized and there was just so much that having somebody like you and your organization come in to just you can still have these things but let's put it in a way that makes sense really would have
Yeah.
been amazing.
our goal is to make our clients' lives easier. And that is done, again, our services are broad because there's a lot of areas that people need this assistance. And
Sure.
so, like I was saying, we have the personal assistance side where we see our clients regularly, but it has morphed into also providing downsizing and relocation services, right? We saw a need that as our clients are aging from an independent family home, but going into a retirement community, how do you get rid of 30, 50 years worth of stuff? It's overwhelming. And so having us come in and be a guiding source for them and hand holding them through that process. And I will tell you, it's a lot easier to say yay or nay to a third party than your children.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
we've seen a lot of like butting heads of family
Yes.
members who are saying, Mom, throw that away, throw it away. But if they receive that information, the same information more delicately put from a third party, it's
Yes.
easier received.
I am thinking about my mother-in-law who was going through some things. Unfortunately, she did get rid of it, but it was like I guess a dance card, like a little tiny book, and like it was the people who you were going to dance with in an event, and it was like that's a fun little memory. But do you need to keep that? Like, does
Yeah.
that need to move again? It has moved
Yeah.
before, and I think maybe it's okay to let that one go. Like,
Yeah. I mean, what's interesting is some of the conversations we have to have is instead of looking at each individual piece, is we put it in a volume perspective, right? So in some cases, we put in front of them, hey, listen, under your bathroom sink, you have enough that fits into this box. What can you put in that box and fill it to the brim, but you can't bring any more. And
yeah,
so having some of those,
love
visual
that.
cues helps people make decisions quicker.
I have a friend and her mom is in the process of moving here from, I want to say Ohio, Indiana, whatever it is. And, so going and seeing, and she just had so much stuff built up. And it's like, okay, let's take a different approach. Like, let's look at these 5 huge bins,
Mhm.
and you don't need 30 years worth of Christmas decorations. So pick
Right.
out one
Your
bin
favorites.
worth and
Yep.
bring that versus everything. So I
Yeah.
think I think those visual cues, I think that's really a great idea. I love that.
Yeah.
I want to come back to some of the administrative support you talked about. So, one of the things that I certainly see and I hear about, and even I get scared about sometimes, is all the scams that are out there. And so, I would think that if you are going through the mail and looking at some of these things and helping with the online transactions, that you're probably also helping protect people.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, in a lot of cases too, what we're doing for some of our clients is, putting together LifeLock accounts to help that, save their identity, but also freezing their credit, right? When you're in a retirement community, you're not looking to take out 30-year mortgage loans, right? So there's
Right.
no reason to have your credit open. So we just freeze our clients' credit, and that's protecting them too. And you're right. What I'm getting, at least some of my clients are aware enough to realize that something looks fishy, and they usually forward it to me and get my opinion on it, right? Something that
Yeah.
looks like a Verizon bill is outstanding, but then you see the URL and very clearly it did not come from Verizon, right? But
Right.
it's those little details that they are not seeing or looking at, or, they've got macular degeneration and they just they can't see it. They rely on us to help navigate some of those things.
So, what is one of the craziest requests that you've had, or something that you've said no to? Or
Oh,
maybe you don't wanna share. It's okay if you don't want to, but I'm
um,
curious.
I mean, some of it is like I literally just came from a consultation where the house was very much a hoarding situation.
Mm,
And so that's not really crazy. These are the people that I think really desperately need our help. But for a senior person, it is impossible to get through. And
yeah,
pets are a big deal for these clients because again, the socialization and having comfort. But what we see, especially in sad situations like that, is that they're so overwhelmed with stuff that
yeah,
they are not even keeping up with their support animal, right? And
yeah,
so, what in this particular case, I saw a lot of, feces around and things like that. And like you can very clearly see that it was impacting her mental health. She was
sure.
going through a depression. She has anxiety and ADD because she starts something, but she can't finish it because no one person could do it all. You can see how that stacks, right? The issues just stack up. And so until you decide to bring in help to get you through that, you're just kind of in this cycle, this never ending cycle. I will say I have, again, maybe not so crazy, but we do have a client that we simply do the packing for her when she goes on a vacation. And
Wow.
that is because she has some dementia. And
Mhm.
so her husband said, listen, I need help with packing. She
Yeah,
waits until the very last second. It's really difficult. I'm always arguing with her. And I think that it would be fantastic if she had some assistance helping putting together outfits, right?
yeah,
So, it's nothing but an hour session with her. And
sure.
it's, a handful of times a year, but something as small as that, is making a huge
Yeah,
impact. And then, I mean, there's a lot of different things wise. We've gotten into some sticky situations. Obviously, when you're dealing with some people's finances,
sure.
that the issue is family members, right? So
Yes.
there's a lot of times we're seeing some clients who are supporting their children, and when we start to look into the nitty gritty and we see, hey, your son or daughter is taking well more than their fair share than what they should be taking for their expenses. I mean,
Yeah,
those are just sticky situations that we've
sure.
come across and trying to clean up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's tough. That is really tough.
Yeah.
So I know that you can't be doing all of these things on your own. And I know when I speak with other business owners, staffing and recruiting and retaining the right people is often a challenge. So
Yeah.
how is that working for you? I know we've chatted briefly before, and I know that you do have some really good people. So talk to me about your process for filling roles, because obviously in this it's very unique and you need a certain kind of person.
I have a good story for you that remind me to tell at the towards the end of this, but because something just came up actually. But yeah, so I what I have found is originally what I thought that would be a great employee for me is a stay-at-home mom, right?
Mhm.
They have all these hours while the kids are in school to help. And because our clients don't need full days, they just need a few hours here and there.
Yeah.
It was perfect timing, right? Late morning, early afternoon, we can accommodate that.
Yeah, makes sense.
It does, but there are always, and I still believe that there could be great stay-at-home moms that would fill this role fantastic. The issue is summer, right? So in summer, we so desperately need consistency with our clients, and that is
Sure.
something that I have said and strive for. In these home care agencies, a lot of times staffing is always an issue. People will leave for an extra quarter an hour, right? And so you're never getting consistency with the person that you're seeing. And that was something that was absolutely critical to me and our business is we get to know everything about the client. We get to know their health concerns. We get to know their financial matters. We get to know their family. I mean, it is a very personal
Yeah.
relationship. And so consistency is super important to me. So I need people where there's longevity here. And what I have found are the very, very best people to work for me is the empty nesters, recent empty nesters, and early retirees. When you lose your children and you were a stay-at-home mom your life, you feel a gap, right? There is a hole and you feel you're a caregiver. So those folks are desperate to help somebody to feel that fulfillment again. So that is a really big one. And then early retirees, these folks had big corporate jobs, they worked hard, they've earned their right to retirement.
Yeah.
Few
They don't
years
wanna be at home bored.
few years after retirement, they go, what's next? What can
Yeah.
I do? Right. And so flexibility is key to this business model because we know that our clients, not every day is a good day. So we may
Sure.
say, hey, I see Sandy every Tuesday afternoon, but guess what? Sandy woke up Tuesday morning and she is not doing well, right? And this is a
Mhm.
real situation. We have a client who has a lot of medical issues, and half of the time she calls or she schedules with us are cancellations. And guess what? We can accommodate that because
Yeah.
we're flexible. We don't have to see them every day. We see them once a week. And so if Tuesday's not a good day, hey, I've got flexibility in my schedule. How about Wednesday? How about Thursday? Right? So because there's flexibility and people are not looking for full-time work, these retirees make the absolute perfect employee.
Yeah, I love that. I am so glad to know more about you and your organization and services, because I fall into that category of no kids. And so
Mhm.
I have thought a little bit about that,
Yeah.
what will happen. And I used to tease my nieces. So I have two nieces that are in their 20s now. And so up until they were 18, my husband and I were the backup plan should something happen to
Yeah.
their parents. And so when they both turned 18, I said, okay, well, now it switches. You know that now it goes the other way. And now you're responsible for taking care of me. Like if
Yeah.
something ever happens, like now you're my caretaker. And they were like, wait, are you serious? And I'm like, no, of course not. And I'm like, I don't ever want to be that burden. But I have certainly thought about like, these are things that I will have to plan for,
Yep.
as I get older, knowing that I'm going to need to make sure that as part of my retirement plan, I'm thinking about having resources to make sure that I do get the services and the support that I need. So I love the work that you're doing. I think it's awesome. And I see such a need for it as well. So I just love it. It's awesome.
Yeah. No, like I said, our everyone on the team is very fulfilled in what they do, and I think that is a critical piece to having a successful business. You have to have people who are passionate about what they do, and I am so thankful because I've kind of split the team into personal assistance and move management, but everybody has done a little bit of each. So if I
Mhm.
needed help in one area, or let's just say a client has a spur of the moment doctor appointment and their main personal assistant is unable because they have their own doctor appointment to get to, our team is so close knit that we say, hey, I've got Suzanne who's ready to pitch in and help, and she's on deck. So that's your plan B, right? So and
Yep.
the women are so fantastic that anytime we have to sub out, if that's needed, it always works out. Like the client is super happy, they get to meet somebody new, right? We had a client yesterday who the person on our team goes and takes her to get her a manicure and pedicure like every 3 weeks or so. And yesterday she said, you know what? Why don't you come get a pedicure with me? So these are like
Aw.
fun outings that we're doing with our clients too. It's not always the boring errands or
Yeah.
the doctor's
Yeah.
appointments, but sometimes it's just real companionship, right?
Yeah.
Like we offer a service, but along with that comes companionship. And again, the older folks we have on the team have experience and they have stories. And so it makes that communication and that relationship really awesome because there's a lot to share.
They're creating friendships. It's human
Absolutely.
connection. I love that. Okay, my last question for
Yeah.
you is since you and your team have all this exposure to individuals who are now in retirement who need these services, what are the three things that I need to start doing now in my 40s so that I will be like amazing when I'm at the point that I need these services too?
And do you mean financially or do you mean health wise?
Either way, both. Which is more important?
Okay. Well, I definitely think financials kind of got to be number one, right? I will tell you what I am seeing in the industry, not the industry, but with our personal clients is some of our clients, as they've aged, have obviously needed to come have home care, right? So helping with the day to day, the bathing, dressing, feeding, that is very expensive. And at
Yeah.
some point, that ends up being 24-hour care. We had a client who was paying probably $11,000 every 2 weeks for that
Wow.
care. And she was in that state for quite a long time. She was fortunate enough that she had a long term care insurance policy. And what that means is that now they're all written a little differently, but it
Sure.
essentially helps cover some of those costs. That to me, it seems like a lot of money every year for at a
Mhm.
time when you don't need those services. But
Well,
getting that package earlier in
yeah.
your 40s, 50s is absolutely going to save you hundreds of thousands of dollars in the long run. Now, insurance is always a risk, right? So it could be that you never end up using that policy, and that's
Sure.
when the insurance companies win. However, it is a major protection for people if they do need those services later on in life. So that would be one. Two would be a plan. So that, and by that, I mean an estate plan, right?
Mhm.
So you need to know what is happening with your assets and who is responsible for what. A lot of what we have done for our clients is get their affairs in order. They may have a will, they may have an estate plan, but it is 15, 20 years out of date, right? So it is getting the affairs in order for whoever is going to manage your estate after the fact. anyone who's been an executor to a parent or a loved one knows what a nightmare it is. So if you can get your assets in a trust, that is one way to save a huge hassle by not having to go through probate. But the other piece is your affairs, right? If I know that my parents passed away tomorrow, I want to know all of their accounts, all their login information. I need to know everything. Who are the beneficiaries? All of that needs to be ironed out to make that a seamless process when you're no longer here. So obviously you want to do what you can to make that easier for someone who's managing that on the other end. And then I honestly think that the third thing I would do is I think that what I'm seeing health wise is having a hobby and having a buddy. So, what I mean by that is hobbies keep you active, right? So,
Mhm.
find that hobby that keeps you active, that you're super passionate about. And that may not just be going for a walk or, doing a craft, but it could be volunteering, right?
Sure.
So, how you are living longer by keeping your brain and your body active.
Yeah.
So, finding and I think that me personally, I'm just so I need to do that with people. So it's the
Yeah.
connection, like you said. So finding that community, no matter what that is going to keep you young longer.
I love it. I love all these ideas. So I definitely have some takeaways with these plans, but definitely the getting my affairs in order. Like this is something that I say all the time, and I'm like, I tell my husband, we need to like get the binder together and all the
Yep.
things and the accounts and the numbers, and I don't. So that is definitely top of mind. And
Hey,
then I
you are not in the minority there. Let me just tell you. Yeah.
Gosh, but yes, but it's a good action item. I've got that down. And then my grandmother who lived into her 90s, she always used to say that if you rest, you rust. And so she was like, you have to be
Right.
doing things. So
That's
I
right.
think that really falls into the like being active and having a buddy to do it. So I love that. So,
Yeah.
well, Kelly, thank you so much for coming on. I really enjoyed hearing about all of the different services and the things that you're doing. And I think it's awesome. I love it. It's a win-win.
It is. I am very, very passionate about this. There's only going to be more people in need, and it has never been about another dollar for me. It's about another person we can help. And
Yeah.
so I thank you so much for having me today. It has been a pleasure talking to you and telling you a little bit more about how we're helping clients.
Yes. Thank you so much. And thank you to our listeners for listening to the Gorilla HR podcast. I hope you'll come back and listen again soon.
That's it for this episode of the Gorilla HR podcast. We hope you found some unconventional wisdom and actionable advice to help you in your own HR journey. Remember, we're all working together to build better workplaces. Want to join in the conversation? Send us your questions, stories, and maybe even your own guerrilla tactics to podcast@gorilla-hr.com. And if you enjoyed the show, please like, subscribe, and share with your network. Until next time.